Hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome to another daily devotion. Thankful that you can be here. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to our channel and like this video and share it if you're finding these things valuable. Also, if you would like to receive a podcast version of this so that you don't have to watch it on YouTube, you can just listen to it while you're driving in your car or maybe taking a walk. You can subscribe to the podcast either on Apple Podcasts by clicking the link that's in the description of the video, or you can just search Pastor Caleb Schultz, basically anywhere you get podcasts. And if you can't find it where you get podcasts, let me know and I'll make sure to get the feed synced up with wherever you get podcasts. Today we're taking on John 7, starting at verse 25. The text is in the description of the video or the podcast if you want to follow along. At this point, some of the people of Jerusalem began to ask, "Isn't this the man they are trying to kill? Here he is, speaking publicly, and they are not saying a word to him. Have the authorities really concluded that he is the Messiah? But we know where this man is from. When the Messiah comes, no one will know where he is from." Then Jesus, still teaching in the temple courts, cried out, "Yes, you know me, and you know where I am from. I am not here on my own authority, but he who sent me is true. You do not know him, but I know him because I am from him, and he sent me." At this they tried to seize him, but no one laid a hand on him, because his hour had not yet come. Still, many in the crowd believed in him. They said, "When the Messiah comes, will he perform more signs than this man?" This is the gospel of the Lord. So in the beginning of this text, it's the people who are kind of muttering to themselves or asking each other, "Isn't this the man they are trying to kill?" Now, in the text previous to this, yesterday's text, we saw that the Pharisees and the teachers of the law were kind of accusing Jesus like, "Oh, you're making such a big deal. Like, who's trying to kill you? It's not us." But it's very obvious that the crowd was pretty in tune with the fact that the Pharisees were actually trying to get Jesus out, whether that meant actually killing him or just somehow getting rid of him. They were pretty in tune to that. And so they say, "Here he is speaking publicly, and they are not saying a word to him. Have the authorities really concluded that he is the Messiah?" So what they're thinking of is, okay, well, we know these Pharisees are trying to kill Jesus, and yet he's kind of shutting them up. Is it possible that these Pharisees think Jesus is the Messiah? I mean, it's kind of like the moment where like a bully gets stood up to, and then there's that like pivotal moment. You get this in like a sitcom, maybe, if you're watching a sitcom, or maybe it happened to you in real life. A bully comes and he's like trying to bully another person and put him down and tell him to shut up or tell him to go away or whatever it is. And then that person who's being bullied stands up to the bully. And then there's the moment where does the bully hold on to his bullying and continue to push back, or does he get shut up? And does he step back and realize that his bullying was a front? It was him trying to have control of something that he didn't really have control of. And that's exactly what's happening here. Is the bullies, the Pharisees, are coming into Jesus and they're like, "You can't do this. You don't have the power. You don't have the authority. This is our church. We do it our way." And Jesus stands up to them and says, "Look, I'm the Son of God," is basically what he says. And then the Pharisees start to shut up. And the people notice that and they say, "Oh, well, maybe those Pharisees aren't as powerful and as smart as we thought they were. Maybe the bullies just got stood up to." Now, I just want you to think about this in the context of greater Christianity as it applies to our life. And then I want to make a very specific application for Jesus and you. Christianity is going to get quote unquote bullied in the world. There are going to be people constantly who are speaking against or acting against Christianity. It is constantly going to happen. That's what Jesus says. That's what the apostles tell us in their letters, that we are going to be persecuted in various ways, some very extreme, some not so extreme. But the point is, it's always going to happen. The beauty of Christianity is when it can stand up to the persecution and not be shut down by the persecution, because what is true is that Jesus is the victor over sin, death, and the world, and the devil. And so anything that comes against Christianity to persecute it, whether with word or with sword, that cannot defeat the power of the gospel and the kingdom of our Lord. And so you are as empowered as somebody who really sees every person who tries to bully them as a weakling, as full of themselves, as puffed up. You can stand up to any bully and know that you're right because Jesus is right, because Jesus is alive. And so for Christianity, let's never let the world shut us up. Let's never let the world press us down. Now, understand how we do that, and I want to be very specific here. We do not come against the world in any sort of way of violence. And I don't just mean physical violence, although I do mean physical violence. I also mean verbal violence. We are not here to win the argument. The argument has already been won. The truth is already contained in the words that Jesus has spoken, because he came from the Father, as John said in chapter 1, full of what? Grace and truth. He spoke the truth with grace, truth in love, right? Speaking the truth in love, as Ephesians will say. And so our battle that we fight against those who would try to press down the church is not one where we fight back, but where we simply stand our ground and say, no, you actually can't move us. And that's happened across the history of the world as the church has been persecuted in numerous places. Those who were willing to stand their ground and not fight back, but not give up the truth of what their scriptures taught them and how it taught them to live, they survived. Their church made it. There are some places, and I'm thinking particularly of like Spain and places in Russia, where really Christianity, at least in a public sense, was eradicated. It was taken out, but it sort of existed underground. And there were a few people who just continued to be Christian through their basically dark time of not being able to be public about their Christianity. And now, in some of those places, Christianity is acceptable, at least in the public square. And those churches are starting to revitalize and grow and find new people. They just never let the wick burn out. That might be the case in our country. It might not be. I'm not a prophet. But here's what I know. If we are willing to say we will never back down from the truth, then they can never take us out. Even if they take our lives, even if it got to that point, the blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church, is what one church father said. In other words, where martyrs start to die, where witnesses start to die for their faith, the church seems to grow, at least historically. So let's never back down from the bullies who are going to try to make us shut up. And then specifically for you, remember that Jesus never backs down to Satan's accusations of you. When Satan comes against you, he comes with the accusation that you are not good enough for God. You have messed up in too many ways. You are a broken person with no hope of being redeemed. And Jesus never lets those words stagger him for a second. He will constantly come back with the evidence of his blood for your soul in the courtroom of heaven to God the Father, the judge. And so you can know that no matter who comes and blows hard against you with all their accusations, whether it be Satan, the world, or even your own sinful nature, Jesus does not back down from standing up for you. The text continues. This is verse 27. The people are still talking. They say, "But we know where this man is from. When the Messiah comes, no one will know where he is from." It's kind of an interesting thing, and it's kind of hard to nail down exactly why they think this. You could look back at some Old Testament prophecies, and on the one hand, find that the Bible is very specific about where the Messiah is going to be from. I mean, Micah says Bethlehem, and there are other places that talk about him being from Galilee, and that he's going to work in Galilee, excuse me. So we kind of have an idea exactly where the Messiah is going to be from. So why do they say that we don't know where he is from? Some will say that it's because in Isaiah prophesies that no one will know his generation. In other words, no one will know kind of how he came into being, which of course is true in Jesus, that he was born of a virgin, not the normal way. So it could be that. But there's another option, and I think this is the best option. You don't have to agree with me, but I just think they're spouting false doctrine. They're just wrong. They maybe are ignorant. Maybe they are just deceived in some way. In any case, I might not be right, but here's the application, and this is definitely true, that you should understand as you read the Bible is a history before it is a theological book. So as you read this book, it is the accounts of real people who really lived in this real world that you live and breathe in right now. And yes, they are the inspired words of the Holy Spirit. And yes, they have the power to separate joint from marrow, as the Hebrews author says when he says the word of the Lord is living and active. But it is also just a historical recounting of the facts. And so in some places, there are going to be things that are, I hate to say it this way, but they're wrong. Like, people are going to say false things. The book of Job is a perfect example of this, where Job's friends are saying stuff that's not true, that we should not agree with because they're wrong. But the Bible puts them in there to show, first of all, what the truth is in contrast to the falsity, and also to be realistic about the false things that people think and that people say. And this separates the Bible from any other holy book in that it is very realistic as a human historical document. And that allows us to latch on to the person of Jesus Christ as a historical person who historically died and rose again, and that makes our faith true. Sometimes people ask what makes the Bible true or any more good than any other book, or what makes Christianity right? The answer is Jesus rose from the dead in history. If you can prove that he didn't, the whole religion is wrong. But so far nobody has. That's because it actually happened. But that's the point, is that this book is so realistic that you can actually trust it as real history. Whether that's the truth or not from the text, I leave that to your judgment, but that's where I'm standing on it. Verse 28, then Jesus, still teaching in the temple courts, cried out, yes, you know me, and you know where I am from. I'm assuming he means you know that I'm from Nazareth, Galilee, Bethlehem. And I'm not here, but I am not here on my own authority, but he who sent me is true. You do not know him, but I know him because I am from him and he sent me. If you've been paying attention through this whole kind of section, chapter 6 and 7, this refrain of like, the Father and I are one, essentially, is what Jesus is saying. Like, that keeps coming back up. That seems to be the main message of Jesus. And I don't know if this strikes you, but it strikes me a little bit that as I think of Jesus, I very often think of, death on the cross, resurrection, miracles maybe, and some of his preaching about different ways to, live. And that's true, and that's good, and that is a very, very important part of who Jesus is. But Jesus makes a big deal about the fact that he and the Father are one, and that he is exactly from the Father, and that he is begotten of the Father from eternity. And John's trying to bring this out in the gospel. I think we ought to remember Jesus is, as Paul says in Colossians 2, the fullness of the deity in bodily form. God, the thing that we desire, the thing that we were made to worship, the thing that we were made to be in perfect, fearful relationship with, has been far off because of our sin, but now in the person of Jesus Christ has come near. And in the same way right now we lack nearness with our friends and our family, Jesus has made God near to us. And as he continues to be near to us in his word and in his sacraments of baptism and the Lord's Supper, which John's gospel is all about, then we get that nearness still today. So let's not just glaze over those words and feel like Jesus is repeating himself. He is pressing down into our heart the nearness of God to us, that we are not abandoned in this world, whether there be very few Christians around us, in our family, our friends, or in our church. Jesus is still near to us. He's not far off giving us a philosophy or a to-do list. He is near to us because he and the Father are one, and he has come down from the Father to make him known to us. The text concludes then, at this they tried to seize him, but no one laid a hand on him because his hour had not yet come. Still many in the crowd believed in him, and they said, when the Messiah comes, will he perform more signs than this man? So, his hour had not yet come. John makes a big deal of the hour, and they're always talking about his cross. His main purpose to come was to die on the cross and then to rise again. And so no one can touch him yet. They will touch him eventually. They will nail his hands and his feet into wood, and they will kill him. But it's not yet that time. And yet people believed in him, right? Still many in the crowd believed in him because of the signs. And they say, when the Messiah comes, will he perform more signs than this man? In other words, is there anyone that compares to this guy? And I think sometimes as we do evangelism, and I know I'm getting close on time here, but as we do evangelism, I think if we present Jesus as one who is a completely unique person, we may find ourselves with a little bit more success than parroting a whole bunch of doctrinal points. Doctrine is important, don't get me wrong. But Jesus, the person of Jesus, is where the religion of Christianity finds its centerpiece. And that person of Jesus is so unique that these people were saying, look, if there's another Messiah who's coming, there's no way he can compare to this guy. This guy must be the guy. What if we thought that same way? Look, I'm going to show you a man who knows everything you've ever done, as the woman at the well says. I'm going to show you a man who shows you grace like no other person shows you. I'm going to show you a man who speaks truth in a way that no one else speaks truth. I'm going to show you a man who absorbs evil into himself instead of repaying evil to the world. I'm going to show you a person who has lived completely selflessly his entire life and then claims that because of his death and his resurrection, which is like the most unique thing about him, that you get credit for all of his selflessness for his entire life. Let's make that the core of our evangelism. Let's know Jesus and let's make him known, because when people know him, they know the Father. Thank you so much for spending time with me this morning. I encourage you to like and subscribe to this video. And if you're listening on the podcast, thank you very much. Make sure you share this episode if you're finding it useful. We want to get as many people to hear this content as possible because we want many people to know Jesus. God bless you. And if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you click on the links on the screen so that you can see some more things that we've been doing.